They say in Hollywood, the worst mistake you can make is saying no to the wrong script. But what happens when the biggest stars let the biggest roles slip through their fingers? Behind every iconic performance is another name left wondering what might have been. Which legendary parts were almost played by someone else? And how did those decisions haunt the stars who passed? Stay tuned, because a few of these Hollywood regrets are still whispered about in backlots today. Kim Novak. When Hollywood whispers about lost opportunities, Kim Novak's near-casting as Holly Golightly stands out as one of the great what-ifs. In the late 1950s, Novak was riding high from hits like Picnic and Vertigo, her mysterious allure making her one of the era's most bankable stars. So when Truman Capote's novella Breakfast at Tiffany's was set to be adapted, Novak was Paramount's favorite. Capote himself, famously outspoken, wanted Marilyn Monroe. But Monroe's team nixed the call girl angle, leaving Novak at the top of the list. But Kim Novak, wary of being typecast as the wounded, glamorous outsider, and perhaps sensing the controversial undertones of Holly, quietly turned the part down. At the time, it seemed like a cautious move. The studio system was still powerful, and reputation was everything. The role eventually went to Audrey Hepburn, who brought a wistful, otherworldly charm and transformed the film into an instant classic. Hepburn's image, sunglasses, little black dress, coffee cup in hand, became an indelible symbol of cinematic elegance, immortalizing her in pop culture and elevating her career forever. For Novak, it was a decision that lingered. She went on to more successes, but never again starred in a film that defined a generation the way Breakfast at Tiffany's did. In later interviews, Novak spoke openly of the role she let slip away, admitting that seeing Hepburn's performance and the public's adoration made her realize just how much magic can be lost with a single no. Groucho Marks. It's hard to picture anyone but Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, the twinkle in his eye, the sense of playful menace. But originally, the producers behind Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory envisioned the role for a different kind of madcap genius. Groucho Marks. By the late 1960s, Groucho was a comedy legend, synonymous with anarchic wit and quick-fire sarcasm. When Roald Dahl's beloved book was being adapted, the idea of casting Groucho seemed inspired, a blend of chaos, humor, and just enough edge to keep audiences on their toes. Groucho, however, wasn't convinced. He reportedly thought the script was too bizarre and wasn't sure audiences would connect with its surreal blend of childlike wonder and grown-up satire. Perhaps he didn't want to risk his carefully curated image, or simply felt the role was too far removed from his own style. Whatever the reason, Groucho declined, and the producers moved on, eventually finding Gene Wilder, whose gentler, more mysterious approach became the heart of the film. The result? Wilder's Wonka became a cinematic icon, beloved by generations. Groucho, meanwhile, missed out on the chance to introduce himself to a whole new audience of children and families. Decades later, film historians and Groucho's own fans would speculate about what might have been, an alternate version of Wonka, crackling with zingers and mischief. It remains one of classic Hollywood's great casting regrets, a moment where a single no changed film history. Bette Davis. Bette Davis never shied away from difficult roles, and her sharp wit matched her immense talent. Yet even legends have their blind spots, and for Davis, that blind spot was gone with the wind. In the mid-1930s, as David O. Selznick launched his hunt for the perfect Scarlett O'Hara, Davis was high on the list. She had the fire, the southern drawl, and the ability to play complex women teetering on the edge of destruction. But the prospect of working with Clark Gable, an actor she reportedly didn't admire, and being attached to a studio outside her own, soured her interest. Instead, Davis passed, and Selznick's exhaustive casting search continued. The part eventually went to Vivien Leigh, a British actress almost unknown in Hollywood. Leigh's Scarlett became the embodiment of survival and ruthless charm, a performance that won her the Academy Award and cemented her in film history. The movie itself was a phenomenon, breaking box office records and remaining a cultural touchstone for generations. Davis would later win 2 Oscars and build a career on tough, unforgettable roles, but she never truly escaped the shadow of Gone with the Wind. In candid moments, she admitted a what-if lingered. Seeing Lee's rise and the mythos surrounding Scarlett O'Hara, Davis knew she'd passed on a role that only comes around once in a career. In Hollywood, regret sometimes echoes louder than applause. Gene Tierney. Gene Tierney's name is now synonymous with the haunting, unforgettable portrait at the center of Laura, but few remember just how close she came to missing her own career-defining role. In the early 1940s, Tierney was already a rising star, her ethereal beauty and poised screen presence making her a favorite of both critics and audiences. Yet, when offered the lead in Otto Preminger's adaptation of Vera Casperi's novel, she hesitated, torn between loyalty to a competing studio commitment and a sense that she might be ill-suited to play such a mysterious figure. For a brief but pivotal period, another actress was actually set to take the role. Tierney's reluctance stemmed from studio politics and the fear of being typecast in melodramas. But fate intervened when the other project fell apart, and friends persuaded her to reconsider. Tierney finally accepted, but later confessed that nearly turning down Laura was her greatest near miss. Had she walked away, it's unlikely the film would have attained the same iconic status, or that Tierney herself would have become such a lasting symbol of classic Hollywood allure. Laura became a landmark of film noir, and Tierney's enigmatic performance is still studied by film students today. In later interviews, she admitted the near miss haunted her, especially as the movie's reputation soared and Laura became shorthand for a certain kind of screen mystery. For Tierney, it was a case of coming close to cinematic oblivion, saved by a last-minute change of heart. Carrie Grant. It sounds almost unbelievable now, but before Sean Connery ordered his first shaken not stirred martini, Carrie Grant was the studio's top pick to launch the James Bond franchise. In the early 1960s, Grant was a global superstar, his suave persona and British charm a natural fit for Ian Fleming's iconic spy. Producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli envisioned Grant as Bond, banking on his international appeal to sell audiences on this new breed of action hero. But at 58, Grant felt he was too old to commit to a multi-film contract. He agreed to discuss playing Bond only once, unwilling to sign for a series, as the producers wanted. Grant later admitted he regretted turning it down, especially as Bond became a pop culture juggernaut. Instead, the role went to a then little-known Sean Connery, who redefined cinematic masculinity and set the bar for all action stars to follow. For Grant, the sting of regret came not just from missing out on an unprecedented franchise, but from seeing Connery become an icon to a whole new generation. The Bond movies outlasted trends and reboots, growing into the longest-running franchise in movie history. Grant remained a star, but the shadow of 007 of what could have followed him for years, a reminder that sometimes even legends miss the train to immortality. Deborah Kerr. Deborah Kerr was the very image of elegant restraint, a performer who built her reputation on grace, intelligence, and quiet intensity. But when offered the role of Blanche Dubois in Elia Kazan's film adaptation of A Streetcar Named Desire, Kerr balked. She had played Blanche to acclaim on stage in London, but bringing her to the big screen was a risk she was unsure she wanted to take. The rawness of Tennessee Williams' script, combined with Hollywood's nervousness about controversial material, made the project a gamble. Kerr's refusal was rooted in more than nerves. She worried about typecasting and the possibility that the role's emotional brutality might be too much for audiences and her own career. Ultimately, the role went to Vivien Leigh, whose tour de force performance won her a second Oscar and ensured her place in the pantheon of great dramatic actresses. Years later, Kerr admitted that letting Blanche slip away was a career turning point. The critical acclaim and enduring legacy of A Streetcar Named Desire continued to haunt her, even as she starred in classics like From Here to Eternity, and The King and I. Lee's performance became legendary. But Kerr's regret was a silent echo behind her own carefully composed legacy, a reminder of the rare roles that come once in a lifetime. Marlon Brando. By the early 1960s, Marlon Brando had already transformed the art of screen acting. He was unpredictable, magnetic, and powerful, precisely the sort of presence director David Lean envisioned for the epic Lawrence of Arabia. The role of T.E. Lawrence demanded not just physical endurance, but a mysterious psychological depth that Brando could deliver in spades. When Lean approached Brando, the actor seemed like an inspired choice, capable of making Lawrence a mythic, unforgettable figure. But Brando wasn't interested. Reports from the period suggest he balked at the idea of months in the punishing heat of the Jordanian desert, especially after his grueling experience filming Mutiny on the Bounty. He also expressed skepticism about playing a real-life British officer, concerned he might not connect with the part. Ultimately, he turned down the project, and Lean cast Peter O'Toole, a relative newcomer, who threw himself into the demanding shoot and emerged as an overnight sensation. The film won 7 Oscars and is still considered one of the greatest ever made. Brando's regret was clear years later. He admired the movie's scale and O'Toole's performance, and admitted that turning down Lawrence of Arabia was a rare misstep. The film not only made O'Toole an international star, but also became a career touchstone. For Brando, it became a reminder that even the biggest stars can walk away from roles that would have changed their legacy forever. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford, by 1950, was already a Hollywood institution, known for her intensity and steely screen presence. When director Billy Wilder sought a larger-than-life actress to anchor his caustic Hollywood noir Sunset Boulevard, Crawford's name came up immediately. Norma Desmond, the deluded silent film star grasping at faded glory, seemed tailor-made for her blend of vulnerability and bravado. Yet Crawford declined, wary of the script's darkness and the self-referential bite Wilder brought to the table. Some sources claim she was intimidated by the unflinching depiction of aging and madness. The role went to Gloria Swanson, another silent-era legend, who embraced its madness and delivered a performance that stunned critics and audiences. Swanson's Norma Desmond became a symbol of the perilous side of stardom, her lines and expressions quoted and studied for generations. The film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards and became a touchstone for anyone fascinated by the darker side of Hollywood fame. Crawford would later confess that Sunset Boulevard was a missed opportunity, one that gnawed at her, especially as she herself would grapple with similar fears of fading relevance. Swanson's revival and the film's lasting impact made it one of the greatest what-ifs of classic cinema. Crawford's absence became as legendary as the performance itself, a shadow that haunted her in later years. Fred Astaire. In the golden age of movie musicals, Fred Astaire was king. His effortless elegance, precision, and inventive dance routines set the standard for decades. So when MGM began developing Singin' in the Rain in the early 1950s, Astaire was their dream choice to play Don Lockwood, a silent film star navigating the transition to talkies. But Astaire was booked solid, committed to other projects, and privately wondered if the public's appetite for musicals was fading. He also believed, perhaps mistakenly, that his time as a leading man in musicals was coming to a natural close. Astaire's polite decline opened the door for Gene Kelly, whose athletic, exuberant style brought a new energy to the genre. Kelly didn't just perform in Singin' in the Rain. He practically redefined what a musical star could be, blending charisma, humor, and physical prowess. The film became a cultural touchstone, and Kelly's performance, especially the legendary title number, is now one of cinema's most beloved scenes. A Stair continued to make memorable films, but he never landed a project with the lasting, joyful impact of Singin' in the Rain. In interviews, he praised the film and Kelly's artistry, but friends noted a hint of wistfulness when the subject came up. Sometimes, even the most established icons can miss the role that defines a generation. James Kagny. James Kagny was the original Hollywood tough guy, known for gangsters, charm, and a knack for turning even the simplest role into something electric. So when Frank Capra began searching for his George Bailey, the kind-hearted everyman at the center of It's a Wonderful Life, Kagny's name was floated early in development. Capra saw something in Kagny's vulnerability and sense of restless energy. But Kagny, busy with other projects and not entirely convinced by the script's fantastical elements, politely declined. He felt it was a small film and failed to see how it would resonate with post-war audiences. The role went instead to Jimmy Stewart, who brought his own blend of warmth and quiet desperation. Stewart's Bailey became the heart and soul of one of cinema's most beloved holiday classics. While the film initially underperformed at the box office, its subsequent revival on television transformed it into an American institution. Stewart's performance is now widely considered among the finest of his career, and the character of George Bailey is woven into the fabric of popular culture. Kagny, who continued to enjoy a long and storied career, is said to have later regretted passing on the role after witnessing its enduring appeal and emotional resonance. In interviews, he called Capra one of the greats and admitted that sometimes the one you let go is the one that lasts forever. It's a Wonderful Life stands as a testament to both the power of film and the bittersweet nature of choices made in Hollywood's golden age. Jean Arthur. Jean Arthur was no stranger to the spotlight, having charmed her way through screwball comedies and poignant dramas alike. When David O. Selznick launched his infamous nationwide search for Scarlett O'Hara, Arthur was among the actresses who not only made it to the final rounds, but actually screen-tested for the role. Arthur had the wit and the steeliness to make Scarlett more than just a Southern belle. She could have brought a unique dimension to Margaret Mitchell's tempestuous heroine. Yet Arthur was plagued by doubts. She struggled with the pressure of the production, reportedly found the atmosphere overwhelming, and had little confidence in the script's epic ambitions. Her hesitancy led her to withdraw, leaving the field open to Vivien Leigh, who would go on to win an Oscar and leave an indelible mark on Hollywood history. For Arthur, the missed opportunity wasn't just about fame or awards. It was about being a part of something larger than life. In the years that followed, Arthur reflected on the decision with a twinge of regret, admitting she never again encountered a project with such transformative potential. Scarlett O'Hara became a character for the ages, and Arthur's near miss served as a lesson in how fleeting and life-changing a single role can be. In Hollywood, such moments become the stuff of legend and lifelong reflection. Olivia De Havland. Olivia De Havilland's career was marked by her astute choices and her ability to imbue every role with warmth and intelligence. But even Hollywood's most careful planners have moments of hesitation, and for De Havilland, it came when she was offered the title role in Mrs. Miniver. The part was demanding, a British housewife enduring the harrowing early days of World War II, and would require her to stretch both emotionally and physically. De Havilland, unsure of the film's prospects and wary of being typecast, turned it down. The role instead went to Greer Garson, whose luminous performance won her the Oscar and made Mrs. Miniver one of the defining films of wartime cinema. The film was a critical and commercial success, boosting morale both in America and abroad, and Garson's portrayal became a symbol of quiet heroism and resilience. De Havilland later admitted that, while she remained proud of her body of work, Mrs. Miniver was the one that got away. Watching Garson's ascent and the film's cultural impact, De Havilland recognized the power of a single role to reshape a career and to speak to the spirit of an entire era. The missed chance became a quiet, persistent reminder of the unpredictable alchemy of Hollywood stardom. Montgomery Clif. Montgomery Clif, one of the most talented and sensitive actors of his generation, was at a turning point in his career when he was offered the role of Joe Gillis in Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard. The film's dark satire of Hollywood's underbelly fascinated Clif, and initially, he was enthusiastic about playing the struggling screenwriter opposite Gloria Swanson's haunted Norma Desmond. However, as production drew near, Clif grew apprehensive. The storyline, about a young man kept by an older, fading star, echoed rumors about his own personal life. Worried about negative press and being typecast, he ultimately walked away. The part went to William Holden, whose brooding performance revived his own fading career and earned him an Oscar nomination. Sunset Boulevard became a cornerstone of American cinema, dissecting the illusions of stardom with savage brilliance. Critics lauded Holden's portrayal, and the film's razor-sharp dialogue and atmospheric gloom left a lasting mark on audiences. For Clif, who continued to seek out challenging and unconventional roles, turning down Joe Gillis was a decision he privately rued. He reportedly confessed to friends that he felt he'd missed a chance to push himself as an actor and to play a part that would become truly iconic. As Sunset Boulevard grew in stature, so too did Clif's regret, a reminder that the roles we refuse can haunt us as much as the ones we accept. Irene Dunne. Irene Dunne was the epitome of grace in classic Hollywood, balancing dramatic depth with a gift for light comedy. When early plans for a film adaptation of The Sound of Music surfaced in the late 1950s, the producers saw Dunne, herself a trained singer with Broadway credentials, as a natural fit for Maria von Trapp. Dunne, however, felt her era had passed and politely declined, believing she was too old to convincingly play the spirited governess. She underestimated the enduring appeal of the story and its music, and stepped aside. Years later, the project was revived with Julie Andrews in the lead, and the rest became film history. Andrews' performance, sparkling with optimism and sincerity, became instantly beloved worldwide. The film not only shattered box office records, but also won 5 Academy Awards and embedded itself in the cultural consciousness as one of the most celebrated musicals of all time. Dunne, who retired with her reputation intact, admitted in interviews that she had no idea how big it would be. Watching generations fall in love with Maria and the Von Trapp family, she later expressed a wistful appreciation for what she'd missed, a role that would have been the crowning achievement of any performer's career. Richard Burton. Richard Burton's association with Cleopatra and Elizabeth Taylor is the stuff of legend. But what's less known is that Burton nearly turned down the role of Mark Antony. The film was mired in controversy, beset by production delays, and already infamous for ballooning costs. At first, Burton hesitated, wary of stepping into such chaos and skeptical about starring in a sword and sandal epic. The studio's desperation to save the project finally convinced him, but for a period, he seriously considered walking away from a part that would change his personal and professional life forever. When he ultimately accepted, Burton found not only an iconic role, but also an enduring romance with Taylor. Their off-screen affair overshadowed the film itself, captivating the world and launching a new chapter in Hollywood's celebrity culture. The film, though notorious for its troubled shoot, became a historic blockbuster, and Burton's Antony remains one of the most memorable performances of his career. Reflecting on the experience, Burton confessed that he would have never forgiven himself had he passed on the film. For all the headaches, Cleopatra solidified his legend and served as a lasting reminder that even the most chaotic projects can contain the role of a lifetime. Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple was America's darling in the late 1930s, a box office sensation whose dimples and sunny voice helped lift the country's spirits during the Great Depression. When MGM began planning its adaptation of L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz, Temple was the studio's first choice for Dorothy Gale. She was already a singing and dancing prodigy, and her wholesome persona seemed like the perfect fit for the Kansas farm girl swept away to a land of fantasy. Negotiations between MGM and Temple's home studio, 20th Century Fox, stretched on for months, but ultimately fell apart, largely due to contract disputes and concerns about Temple's vocal range for the demanding songs. The role then went to Judy Garland, who brought both innocence and raw emotion to Over the Rainbow, a performance that would become one of cinema's most iconic. Garland's portrayal transformed her into a star for the ages, and the film's influence only grew with each new generation. Temple, meanwhile, watched the phenomenon from the sidelines, expressing in later years her deep disappointment at missing out. She acknowledged that Dorothy was the role that got away, one that would have marked a turning point even in a career as storied as hers. In Hollywood, sometimes the most magical journeys are the ones never taken. Joan Fontaine. Joan Fontaine's delicately poised performances made her a favorite for roles that required inner strength beneath a gentle exterior. When she was offered the lead in Jane Eyre, Fontaine was hesitant. She worried about being typecast as the same kind of timid, repressed heroine she'd played in Rebecca and Suspicion. For a while, she considered stepping aside to pursue more varied parts. But studio persuasion and her own curiosity about Charlotte Bronte's beloved character finally brought her back to the project. Fontaine's performance as Jane Eyre, opposite Orson Welles' brooding Mr. Rochester, was widely acclaimed and remains one of the defining portrayals of the role. The film's brooding Gothic atmosphere and emotional depth struck a chord with audiences and critics alike. In later years, Fontaine looked back on her indecision and admitted she might have missed the role of a lifetime. It's a reminder that the projects we almost reject can turn out to be the ones that shape our legacy, and that hesitation is part of every artist's journey. Bert Lancaster. Bert Lancaster was known for his athleticism, intensity, and magnetic presence, a star equally at home in gritty noir and grand historical epics. So when MGM began casting Ben-Hur, Lancaster was a natural top choice for the role of Judah Ben-Hur. The offer came at the height of his career, but Lancaster balked. He was uncomfortable with the film's religious themes and doubted that audiences would connect with a story so rooted in faith. He later admitted that he found the script too preachy and turned down what would become one of Hollywood's greatest roles. The studio cast Charlton Heston, who threw himself into the physically demanding part, bringing both stoic strength and vulnerability to the character. Ben-Hur became a box office juggernaut, sweeping the Oscars with a record-setting 11 wins, including Best Actor for Heston. The chariot race scene alone became an indelible moment in cinematic history, and Heston's name became forever associated with the grandeur and spectacle of Hollywood's golden era. Lancaster, who enjoyed a rich and varied career, would later confess in interviews that he regretted passing on the film. Watching Heston's rise and the movie's place in Hollywood lore, Lancaster realized that some scripts, no matter their theme, carry a kind of magic that only becomes clear in hindsight. In turning down Ben-Hur, he missed not just a role, but a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon: William Holden. By the early 1970s, William Holden was a household name, having conquered Hollywood with performances in classics like Sunset Boulevard and Stalag 17. When Paramount began developing The Godfather, the studio considered Holden for the role of Don Vito Corleone, hoping his gravitas and name recognition could anchor the film. Holden, however, was uncomfortable with the film's depiction of organized crime and felt the role was undignified. He declined to audition, convinced the project would never become a classic. The role, of course, went to Marlon Brando, whose nuanced, haunting portrayal defined a new era in American cinema. The Godfather became a touchstone for generations of filmmakers and audiences alike, with Brando's performance often cited as one of the greatest in film history. The movie transformed the gangster genre and redefined the possibilities of the American epic, For Holden, the regret came slowly, as he watched the movie become a cultural phenomenon, and the role of Don Corleone take on mythic status. Although Holden's legacy remains secure, the chance to be at the center of one of Hollywood's most influential films lingered as a reminder. Even the most seasoned stars can sometimes miss the biggest prizes, simply by saying no at the wrong moment. Hollywood's golden age is littered with stories of missed chances and second-guessing, where even icons couldn't always predict which scripts would become legends. Behind every unforgettable role is a shadow of what might have been, a reminder that fate in Tinseltown can hinge on a single decision. So the next time you watch a classic, imagine the parallel universe where another star took the spotlight. Which casting what if surprised you most? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's most fascinating era.